back, my friends, to the Derate The Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. The Derate The Hate podcast is proudly produced in collaboration with Braver Angels, America's largest grassroots, cross-partisan organization working towards civic renewal. This podcast amplifies the mission that we share to foster a more respectful and united America where civic friendship thrives even when we disagree. Each week, through the power of story, conversation, and connection with incredible guests, we work to build bridges instead of barriers. Not to change minds on the issues, but to change how we see one another when we differ. Because, friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with a friend, and visit braverangels.org to learn how you can get involved in the movement to bridge the partisan divide. Friends, I am so incredibly grateful that you have joined me for another powerful Derate the Hate episode. So let's get to it. Friends, if you're feeling worn down by the noise, negativity, and division in our politics, you're not alone. My guest this week is someone who's been on the front lines of rebuilding trust and community in some of the most fractured corners of our country. Rich Harwood is the president and founder of the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation, and for over 35 years he's helped bring people together to tackle real problems, from small towns to major institutions. In this conversation, Rich and I dig into the campaign for what he calls a new civic path, a way forward that does not rely on politicians to fix what's broken, but empowers communities to rediscover belief, dignity, and shared purpose. We talk about what it means to move from a mindset of division to one of building together, and why empathy and human connection, not bureaucracy, hold the key to lasting change. If you are hungry for hope, agency, and a sense of direction in this chaotic time, you're going to want to hear what Rich has to say. Let's get into it with my good friend, Rich Harwood. Here we go. Rich Harwood, so good to see you again, my friend. Thank you for coming back on the Derate the Hate podcast.
Hey, Wilk, it's great to be back. It's good to be with you. Thanks for the invite.
Oh man, I am grateful, and I'm just grateful to see you again, Rich. I've been following the work that you've been doing since you were on the podcast last. Well, it was last year, I think. I think it was episode 229. I think if my
a good number.
Yeah, I think it's a good number. But we were talking back in early 2024 about a campaign that you were going to be doing in conjunction with your work, obviously with the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation. And then the biggest topic was the contention having to do with the presidential campaign and what that was all about. And then I see this well, where I want to start, Rich, with this conversation is enough. Time to build. That is the campaign that you were doing in 2024. And I think that's a good place to start, because how that led into your book, The New Civic Path, is just, it's what we need. It's something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be shouted from the rooftops. And so let's start there. The campaign, enough, time to build.
Yeah, Wilk, as you know, we started that a year ago, more than a year ago now. It was all of 2024. I was on the road every week. And we started during the presidential, knowing that it was a presidential year. And everyone said to me, "What are you, nuts? You're going to get overshadowed. Everyone's going to be focused on politics. It's not going to work." And I said, "No, I'm not nuts. In fact, I believe now is exactly the time we need to do it. People are hunkering for a different kind of message from a different kind of messenger. And so let's go. Let's do this. And the idea was that, the name of the campaign, Enough Time to Build, was that we knew that people were frustrated. They'd had enough. But we knew also that they wanted a path forward. And we, at the time, were thinking we need to build together. We need to do things together. We need to create together as Americans. We need to come back together and build. And so we put those two ideas together. And, it's interesting. I think during the presidential race, we were the only national campaign to be invited to places as different and as diverse as, for instance, I was invited to go to Matt Gaetz's congressional district in the Panhandle of Florida. I was invited to go to Lauren Boebert's congressional district in Colorado. I spoke in Jim Jordan's congressional district, the co-founder of the Freedom Caucus, all deeply red areas. And at the same time, Wilk, I was invited to talk in Flint, Michigan, to go to Selma, Alabama. I went to purple areas like Fort Collins, Colorado, and Fresno, California. And the takeaway from this is, why was it that so many people were inviting us to come from such different political views?
Right.
And I think the takeaway for me was, people were hungry for a different path forward. They were tired of the politics of division, the politics of acrimony, and they were ready to be activated. But what I learned on this path was that they didn't know what to do and how to move forward, which ultimately led to this book, the new Civic Path. And so maybe I was nuts back in 2024, which just means I'm probably ready to be committed or something now, because I've gone back out on the campaign trail, as you know, with a new campaign called the Campaign for a New Civic Path, to articulate what this path looks like, how we as Americans can get on it, what I think it can produce for us. And as we were talking right before we started this, why it's so damn important right now to be talking about these things with each other.
That's right.
In our country.
Yeah. And the reason, Rich, that I wanted to start with the Enough Time to Build campaign and how that led to the New Civic Path campaign is because so many people today that I speak with, that you speak with, we encounter them all the time in this, depolarization work that we do. People have called them the exhausted majority or the exhausted middle, and our friend Manu Meal from Bridge USA calls it the hopeful majority in the middle. But all of us have this one thing in common: is politics, as usual, is tiresome. We've had enough. We look at the ugliness that we see from whether it be those in the media or those in politics or just the outrage entrepreneurs that are constantly trying to capitalize in our social media landscape on the ugliness that they know they can drive through division.
Yeah.
People have had enough.
They have had enough. And what's interesting is, if you think about the word ugliness, which I think is a great word to use to describe in part where we are, there is an ugliness. I think we have at times misplaced our sense of decency and are replacing it with a sense of cruelty at times. We have lost at times the expression of empathy and compassion for one another. We have lost at times the ability to see and hear one another and to uplift one another's dignity. It's a God-given right to have dignity. It's not something that's negotiated.
Right.
It's not like trust or respect. You are afforded dignity because you are here on earth.
That is right.
With others. But here's the other thing that I think is so important, which I know we share, is that juxtaposed to the word ugliness, as I've traveled across the country doing this work and now doing the second wave of this campaign, there's a beauty in America.
Yes.
There's a deep decency, a deep beauty, sometimes a deep sense of patriotism when it's not used to weaponize our political debates,
That's
but
right.
used to call us forward to something deeper about our love for a nation, even if we think it's off track, or especially because we think it's off track. And in that patriotism, we're called to help us get on a better path. And, look, I've just come off the road. I think I was on the road for 5 or 6 weeks straight when we launched this campaign from Northern California with their militia and great divisions to DeSoto County, Florida, which is one of the poorest counties in Florida, to going across Connecticut from all the way east in New London to all the way west in Stamford. So a working class community to one of the most diverse upscale communities, to North Carolina, in a place that in the 80s was one of the top thriving communities in North Carolina, is now at the bottom of every indicator. But here's the deal. No matter where I went, no matter who I spoke with, no matter what the voting results told us about who people voted for in the last presidential election, I couldn't tell who was a Republican or Democrat. Not really. And what I could tell was that people are hungry for a new path forward, not a political path, not a Democratic or Republican path, not a liberal or a conservative path, but an American path.
An American path.
An American path. And I've started to think that, I'm not quite ready to talk about this yet, but I've started to play with the idea that we need a new American agenda in our country that calls us forward, that brings out the best in us, and that says that we are a great country, and a great country steps forward and does the work that it needs to do.
Oh, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I before we transition into that and what that civic path is, I want to step back just a quick second to the concept of ugliness and it just kind of struck me, and it's something I want to get your thoughts on, Rich, because the ugliness that we do see from a lot of people, I don't think, or at least I don't want to think, that everybody that uses those ugly tactics, those outrage entrepreneur tactics, as I often call them, or the fear, outrage, and grievance model that I talk about. I don't want to believe that all of those people are bad people. I mean, in fact, it's not that I don't want to think that they are. I don't think they are. I don't think they are bad people. But I want to get your opinion on something, because the idea of using that ugliness in their interactions, do you think that people sometimes mistake their ability to be ugly? Because, I mean, they have that, right? They have that ability to be ugly, especially in an anonymous way online sometimes, but they mistake that for actually doing something. They want to do something. They feel like they're in a position that they lack control, but they think this is one thing that I can do, and I am going to do it. Mistaking that for actually doing something that's going to produce a meaningful result. Do you think that that's a thing?
Yeah, I do. I think that's really nicely said. I think that we have become entangled. You've talked about these outrage entrepreneurs in a sense, or I think you use a different phrase, but in a similar way. And first of all, I think we have to acknowledge that there are a whole lot of people making a whole lot of money in this country, intentionally manufacturing and stoking division to create fear in our society, to win votes, to win audiences on cable TV, to get us to get engaged in social media and get wound up in algorithms that take us into rabbit holes. I think we have to say as loudly and clearly as we can that that's happening. I think we need to ask the question, who the hell gave you the right to do that? You have a right to be heard. You do not have a right to dominate our public square and hold us hostage. So that's one part. The other part is, in us becoming entangled in it, we have surrendered to it. Unwittingly, unknowingly, we have surrendered to it. To your point about thinking that ugliness is a substitute for action. And when there is such fear, when we are being divided so often, when we feel as though we aren't seen and heard, that our dignity isn't upheld, when we believe that we have lost a sense of control and a sense of agency in our lives, then you end up in a fight or flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're seeing. So I think people think that a form of action is to come out swinging
Mm-hmm.
and to engage sometimes in ugliness, what one might think of as being ugly. And then I think there are even more people who have just thrown up their hands in frustration, disgust, despair.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And retreated. And I think the question for those of us doing this work and for all Americans is, what's an alternative path forward that gives a genuine sense of possibility and an authentic sense of hope?
Yeah, no, that's and beautifully said. And I love the way you talk about or that phrase, kind of summing up what I was talking about is mistaking ugliness for action, right?
Mm.
And then we talk about you said a word there that stood out to me, agency. Right? People feel like they've lost their sense of agency in their ability to actually get anything done. And that's why I love what you're doing here, Rich, with the new Civic Path. And it strikes a big chord for me because, as you know, something that I talk about quite often is the concept of subsidiarity. And when I look at your new Civic Path and you're talking to people within these communities about real things that they can do in their community to produce tangible, meaningful results for their community. Talking about things that are real and things that are affecting them and the conversations that they are having at their kitchen tables that affect them and their children and their relatives and the people within their communities. This is something that most politicians, in my experience, lose sight of, because they're playing around in Washington, D.C. or whatever, instead of actually focusing on the people and the issues that they're talking about and dealing with at their kitchen table.
Yeah, two quick thoughts. One is, you have to wonder and this is on both sides of the aisle right now, but it happens that the Democrats just took a shellacking. Mm-hmm. So you have to wonder, out of that, they said, well, we need to do all these postmortems. We need to go out and commission tens of millions of dollars of focus groups to find out, like, how do young white men talk, or how do folks in the Midwest talk about things? And I'm thinking to myself, my God, if you actually were connected, like genuinely, like as a human being, connected to people and their lives, if you spent the time to actually, as you've said a number of times now, to listen to people and to engage with people and to work with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you actually believe, to me, part of the reason why I talk so much about dignity is because it's a reminder that, and it's actually a requirement, that every life holds value. Right? Every life holds value. And we have to honor those lives, which means that even if you disagree with someone, even if they're different from you, even if they live in a different part of the state than you do, even if they're from a different economic station, that we owe it to each other as human beings to engage with one another. So why do folks need to go commission all these focus groups?
The formula isn't that complicated.
It's not that complicated. I just can't figure it out. It's like, give me the $38 million. So, right? Yeah. So I'm just flabbergasted by that. And I shake my head. And honestly, it motivates me even more. Like, I feel, as you know, I feel really compelled to do this campaign. There's something calling me. There's something tugging at me. There's something propelling me forward to do this. And when I hear this stuff about these focus groups and I see this industry, manufacturing and stoking division, when I see people substituting ugliness for real action, when I see people experiencing a lost sense of hope more than anything.
Yes.
More than anything.
It's heartbreaking.
Then I believe we've got to step forward. We've got to get going here.
And God bless you for doing it, Rich, because there are not enough of us doing it, right? It's, obviously the work that I do is primarily with the organization Braver Angels, but I also, sit on the board of advisors for another incredible organization called the Pro Human Foundation. A
Mm.
lot of these things are centered around the idea that people do not feel heard. Right? I mean, the We the People's Project, which was one of the early things that I got involved in the Braver Angels organization, one of our main themes there is speaking with, giving people time at the podium who are often spoken of but seldom spoken with. One of the things that I've seen you talk about, Rich, a number of times was the idea that, and I think it came from I don't know if it, I think you heard it at a church or saw it on a church billboard or something, but the healing begins when somebody feels heard. These
Yeah.
things are not, again, it's not complicated. It's not a complicated equation. But the fact is a focus group is not needed. Listening to people is what is needed. The healing begins when people feel heard. If
Yeah.
people do not feel heard, their ears slam shut and they're not getting your message. We cannot do anything if we are not listening to each other and working with each other. It's not a matter of trying to change people's minds, but of trying to open people's minds, and then we can actually get things done. People get stuck in their own certainty and they want to preach to people instead of speaking with people.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to the point you made before, and then I sort of went off on this tangent about focus groups. But you're raising the question of agency, and goes directly to how do we get stuff done. And I think one of the challenges in our society today is that people do feel like they've lost control. They do not feel they have a sense of individual or shared and collective agency. And one of the reasons why I think this new civic path is so important is because it's not about let's create more activity. It's not about let's create another organization. It's not about let's get more funding. It's actually about addressing something very human, which is that we need to restore a sense of belief. I think we face a crisis of belief in the country, and to restore a sense of belief in ourselves and know that we can actually get things done, I think we have to turn outward toward one another. I think we actually have to focus on what we can agree on so we can get moving together. We have differences, but how about if we focus on what we can agree on a bit?
Right.
And then I think we actually have to build together, because as you know, Wilk, when you build together, you all of a sudden discover that you have innate capabilities that you might have forgotten, or that someone denigrated, or someone told you not to care about. You all of a sudden discover that other people have innate capabilities that we all can contribute. You discover that we actually do have agency. We can produce things. We can be creators. We can be generators, right? This is part of the American tradition, I believe.
Right.
There's a lot of things that went wrong in our history, but let's not throw away the things that went right in the process, right? And I think when we build together, we rediscover our shared humanity, that we're part of something larger than just ourselves. So to me, this new civic path is not about just creating more stuff. I think we have too much stuff in our communities. It's about creating a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense that we can actually do things together. And it's in that actual process of doing and creating that we restore our sense of belief that we can actually come together and get things done. I think that's so necessary today in this environment.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the fact that people have lost their sense of belonging, their sense of belief, they've lost in so many ways. People have lost their capability to believe in almost anything.
Yes.
So then they're just grabbing onto whatever they can grab onto, and it shouldn't come to anybody's surprise that leads to tribalism. That leads to tribalism because people, as they lose their sense of belonging, as they lose their sense of belief, they lose their we look at institutional trust in all institutions, whether it be the school system or Congress or government, name any government agency, public health. Something I've done so much work with is public health. People have lost their ability to believe in these organizations, and when they lose their ability to believe in all of these things, they just start grasping at anything, and that anything that they're grasping onto oftentimes leads into that ugly and toxic tribalism.
Absolutely. And, our response to this right now, too often, the common response to this is, well, we just need a better person to run for office. We just need to create a new political agenda. We just need to figure out how to talk to certain groups in our society so we can win their votes. I think we've got to take things out of a politicized frame and put them into a frame about what matters to us as human beings, as members of a community.
That's right.
And in doing so, it unlocks the potential for us to come together and start to work together. I know you know this, and I know many of your listeners know this, but it's worth repeating, which is in so many places where the Institute is working right now, which are heavily divided, deeply divided, when the community is able, when folks are able to take things out of a political agenda and put them in an agenda of what matters to them in their lives and for their community, no one cares what party you belong to.
No.
No one cares if you're liberal or conservative. No one cares about these things that we think we care about. And then we can actually get stuff done. So I think part of this is we've got to make the commitment to shift the frame that we're operating in.
That's right.
And unleash our God-given potential to do this work together.
Right. Right. Well, you talked about the concept of pro-humanity stance for our common humanity. Mm-hmm. And when you're going into these community, Rich, and this is what I think people lose sight of is the answer is not in Washington, right? I've said something, and actually this is something I got from, I think, J.D. Vance's, or I loosely translated from J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy, is the idea that if you believe the government is either the cause of or the answer to all of your problems, especially the federal government, you need a paradigm shift. Because it's really not there. It's within each of our capacity, the agency of each of us as an individual, to start looking at what it means to be an individual, what individual responsibility and accountability means. And again, like to your point, is when we get together, groups of people that can stand together in a community and realize that they are part of something bigger than just themselves, and get beyond the politics of the issue and discuss the issues that are meaningful in that community, they can get real things done. So in your new civic path, or in the book, the new civic path, the new civic path campaign, Rich, talk about some of those tangible things that people can do within their community to start working together to create real results.
Well, look, I can give you examples of the results people created, but I think what people really want to know is, how can I do this? Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so one is, there are a number of things, but I'll just boil it down to 4 right now. I think first and foremost, we as individuals have a choice to make. Mm-hmm. Really fundamental, basic choice. And it's not something you can download from the internet. It's not something you can simply read in a book, though I've written lots of books about this stuff, and I hope people buy my books. But honestly, you don't need to buy one of my books to do this or go to one of our trainings. Really, you just need to sit with yourself for a moment and say, what's my orientation? I think our orientation needs that we need to turn outward toward one another. We need to have people and communities always in our line of sight. And that sounds easy, except so much of us have been conditioned to be inward looking, to worry about ourselves, to worry about our metrics, to worry about, if you run an organization, fundraising, to worry about our next strategic plan. We believe that we can't talk to other people because we might say the wrong thing. We're afraid of one another. All these things force us to turn inward, prompt us to turn inward. So I think we need a different mindset, a different orientation. We need to turn outward. So that's number 1. 2, I think we need to focus on our shared aspirations. We have become really practiced and quite good at talking about what we're against. But one of the things that I find in engaging with the beauty of America is that we really want to know what we're for. And I think we can determine what we are for when we focus not on problems, not on utopian visions that bear no relationship to our reality, but on our shared aspirations that come from our gut.
Mm-hmm.
And when we express them, just anyone listening, try this after this program, after you listen. Ask someone about their aspirations for their lives and their community, and they will tell you something that is actionable, doable, and achievable. Do it with other people, and all of a sudden you realize that while we don't agree on everything, we can agree on some things.
Mm-hmm.
Do it with other people, and all of a sudden you realize that in a world that keeps telling us we're so different from one another, we do share some things in common.
That's right.
Do it with other people, and you realize that actually you are creating community through the very process of focusing on shared aspirations, because we hold them in common, and we can only act on them together.
That's right.
So that's number 2. 3, we got to build. Build. We're not going to make it through this juncture in history by simply talking to each other.
That's right.
We've got to create belief. Belief comes from seeing things happen by having a sense of possibility and hope in this world that we live in. And so we have to produce things which create proof, which we can then use to send signals to people that it's okay to come out. There's something productive happening. We can all be producers together, and we can restore or reclaim or rediscover our sense of individual and shared agency and get on a different path. Lastly, we need to think less about fixing problems and fixing people, and more about creating a new trajectory of hope. No one believes we're going to solve education problems tomorrow. No one believes we're going to deal with safety issues immediately. No one believes we're going to deal with meth and fentanyl and opioid addiction in our communities that have ravaged our communities, right? What people want to know is, are we actually getting serious? Are we telling the truth about what we really face? And are we rolling up our sleeves, and are we putting ourselves on a better course that doesn't fizzle out in time, but grows with increasing momentum, Wilk, that grows over time with increasing civic confidence, that grows over time by enlisting more and more people because they believe something positive and productive can happen in our lives, in our communities, and in this society. So if someone said, well, what can I do? I'd say, just start with these 4 points. Don't make it more, you've mentioned this a number of times now. Don't make it more complicated. You don't have to read any books. You don't have to do anything. You already know this stuff within you.
Right.
You've been told you don't. And maybe you've been convinced that you don't, but you do.
No, that's right. I mean, too many people are out there convincing you and me and everybody else, or trying to anyway, that they are going to be the savior. They are going to be the ones that are going to swoop in and solve your problems. A lot of those problems start here, and a lot of those problems will get fixed here with each one of us as an individual. Rich, go ahead.
It's interesting. Look, I just want to go back to a point you made before, because you were talking about Washington can't fix a lot of things. And so let me just dispose of the Washington argument real quick, which is, yes, the federal government needs to act on certain things. Okay, period. Full stop. But here's the deal. The things that people are talking about in communities that really concern them are things like youth. They're things like education. They're things like wellness. They're things like belonging. They're things like senior care. All of those things require us in communities to act together to create a stronger community for different folks in our community. That's part A. Part B is they're saying we're too siloed, we're too fractured, we don't have a sense of belonging. I don't feel seen and heard. My dignity isn't being upheld. These are all things I'd put in the category of civic culture. All of these things we need to create. Washington can't create this stuff for us. State Capitol can't create this stuff. I don't care how many pieces of legislation you pass. These are human dilemmas that require human action in our communities, where we can see and hear one another and get to work. And then we can spread a different ethos, a different ethic, a different belief across the country.
That is absolutely right. Human dilemmas that require human action, not government action, not some faraway politician that's going to pretend to be your Superman. Human dilemmas that require human action. And another thing that you said right there at the end, belief comes from seeing things happen. Mm-hmm. These things are so important. And this is the path forward, Rich. This is the new civic path. It's not complicated. It is doable. We can do it together. We are better together. And the work that you're doing is incredible. Rich Harwood, our time today has flown by again. And I always love talking to you, man. This is the work that you're doing, the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation. Just a great organization. You're doing great work, and God bless you for it. Thank you so much, Rich.
God bless you. Thanks for having me.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to get the Derate The Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. We really are better together, so please take a moment to visit braverangels.org and consider joining the movement towards civic renewal and bridging our political divides. This is Wilk wrapping up for the week saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make every day the day that you want it to be. With that, my friends, I'm going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.